probably seen news footage of officers ordering people out of their cars. But did you know that there are times when you can refuse to get out of your vehicle? I'm attorney Andrew Flushy, and this channel is about defending your rights. Subscribe for a new video every Tuesday. One of my subscribers, Troy, sent in a great question on this very issue. In Virginia, when you get pulled over by the police, they say you don't have to get out of the car. Then, if the police officer asks you to get out of the car and you don't, what happens? I've asked police officers this question directly, and they tell me you don't have to get out of the car if you're asked. So what's the answer? First, it is legal for officers to ask you out of the car in the first place. The United States Supreme Court in Pennsylvania versus Mims ruled that the police officer, once they've lawfully pulled you over, can order you out of the car. Under the Mims ruling, that is not a violation of your Fourth Amendment rights against illegal search and seizure. The court held that exiting the vehicle once you've lawfully been pulled over is a minimal further intrusion on your liberty. The police have already lawfully decided that the driver shall be briefly detained. The only question is whether he shall spend that period sitting in the driver's seat of his car or standing alongside it. The court justified this intrusion in the name of officer safety. They ruled that it's essentially safer for officers to ask you out of the vehicle, and therefore it's okay for them to always ask you out anytime they please. However, there are situations where officers clearly don't want you out of the vehicle. I've had many clients who voluntarily try to step out of the vehicle when they've been pulled over, and officers order them to stay in the vehicle. If exiting the vehicle enhances officer safety, you'd think every traffic stop would entail the officer asking you to step out of the vehicle. A dissenting justice on the Mims decision correctly calls out this BS. The court cannot seriously believe that the risk to the arresting officer is so universal that his safety is always a reasonable justification for ordering a driver out of his car. So if it's not for officer safety, why do the police really want you out of the vehicle? In my experience, there are three main reasons. If there's any suspicion that you're impaired, the officer usually says something like, "Do you mind stepping out of the vehicle to do some quick tests to make sure you're okay to drive?" Simply exiting the vehicle is a little mini field sobriety test all by itself. Did you use the vehicle for balance while you tried to get out? Were you steady on your feet while you walked to where the officer directed you? This is simply part of the beginning of the field sobriety test sequence.
What is your favorite color? Blue. No.
Police routinely ask people to get out of the vehicle so they can run a canine around the vehicle looking for drugs or bombs or other contraband. What I see happens quite often is an officer pulls you over for a minor traffic violation. They have some suspicion that maybe there's drugs, so they immediately call for a canine officer. It just so happens that the canine officer arrives right at the time that the ticket is ready. The officer comes to the window and says, "Would you mind stepping out of the vehicle to come sign the ticket?" Separating you from other people is a basic interrogation technique. The police may ask you to get out of the vehicle to separate you from your passengers or other occupants in the vehicle. What I see routinely is the primary officer asks the driver to step out and takes you to the rear of the car to talk to you about whatever's going on, while a backup officer may be asking similar or different questions of your passengers. So if it's legal for the police to ask you out of the car, but it's generally not done for officer safety reasons, can you refuse to get out of the car? Well, that depends upon if the officer asks you to get out of the car or do they order you to get out of the vehicle. If the officer says, "Would you mind stepping out to do some quick tests for me to make sure you're okay to drive?" you can politely say, "No, thank you." That was simply a request on the officer's part, and you can decline that request. But if the officer says, "Sir, please step out of the vehicle," that's an order. If you refuse that order, there could be ramifications coming at you soon. Yes, there's a subtle difference in the phrasing, but it's an important difference. Now let's say you're mistaken and you think the officer is asking you to step out of the vehicle and you politely decline. If he wants to order you out of the vehicle, he will likely make that very clear. If he wants to order you out of the vehicle, he's going to repeat the order and he's going to make it clear that this is not a polite request. And then you'll know that you do need to step out of the vehicle according to Pennsylvania versus Mims. Let's look at a case study where both the driver and the officer face consequences for their actions. Now this example comes from Virginia, but the law is the same across the United States because this is a United States Constitution issue. Back in 2019, Derek Thompson is stopped by the Virginia State Police for an expired state inspection sticker. The initial trooper who pulls over Mr. Thompson believes that she can smell marijuana coming from the vehicle, so she orders him out of the vehicle, presumably so she can search the vehicle for marijuana. Back in 2019, it was still illegal in Virginia. Mr. Thompson refuses the order to exit the vehicle. Trooper Hewitt shows up, orders him several more times, and then this happens.
Now you're under arrest for disobeying the lawful commands of an officer. I'm giving you to the count of 3.
This officer has threatened me, and I'm making it known I am no threat to this officer. I've been threatened.
Watch the show,
My
folks.
life is in danger. My life is in danger.
Mr. Thompson gets charged with obstruction of justice for refusing the police order to exit the vehicle. After the state police conduct a use of force investigation, no charges are filed against Trooper Hewitt. Mr. Thompson goes to court, pleads guilty, and is convicted of obstruction of justice. But during the 2020 summer of police riots against the police, Mr. Thompson shares his video and he files a civil rights lawsuit against Trooper Hewitt. Mr. Thompson reaches a settlement agreement for $20,000 in this lawsuit, and the state police fire Trooper Hewitt. So how are both Mr. Thompson and Trooper Hewitt at fault in this situation? Mr. Thompson was clearly and repeatedly ordered to get out of the vehicle, and he repeatedly refused. The police had to use force to get him out of the vehicle. That's obstruction of justice, guilty. On the flip side, Trooper Hewitt was clearly inappropriate and unprofessional, and of course the comment about watch the show, folks. Those comments are likely why Trooper Hewitt lost his job as a Virginia State Trooper. There are 2 morals to the story here. First, if the police order you to get out of the vehicle, you must comply, or else you could face serious repercussions for that refusal. If you're stopped by the police, a recording of that encounter that you make could be vital evidence in court, whether you need it to defend yourself or whether you need it to pursue some type of civil rights lawsuit. This is one reason why I recommend that every car you own should have a dash cam running at all times. To make sure you have the right dash cam, check out this video where I talk about the 3 key features that will help you in court. I'll see you over there.